Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Talking Indies in My Undies. My name is Jacob and I'll be your host. It's amazing to think that this podcast has actually been around for 10 years. I started this podcast back in 2014 as a hobby, and it still is a hobby. I just wanted to have a podcast show to discuss topics that are important to me. The topic that seems to come up the most often and was really defined to this podcast is East Tennessee filmmaking. I've had a lot of podcast episodes over the years that talk about the local film festivals, film competitions, interviews with local filmmakers, etc., etc. It's important for me to just say out loud quickly, I have never been affiliated, never been sponsored by any of these organizations. This is a completely independent podcast, something that I do for fun and to serve the local film community here in the East Tennessee region. So, knowing that, we have a really good episode today. Today's guests are Curt Willis and Paul Harrill. Paul Harrill is a filmmaker here in the East Tennessee who I really heard about back in 2003 or 4. I've heard the legend of this guy because he had a short film that went to the Sundance Film Festival and won Best Short Film. It was for a film called Gina, an Actress, age 29. This was in the pre-YouTube era. I couldn't find the film, but I was aware of this guy in Tennessee who went to Sundance and had this great success. And it was hugely inspiring to me. So I always kind of knew of Paul Harrill. And over the years, I learned more about him. I saw a film at the Knoxville Film Festival. I can't remember what year it was. We'll say 2015-ish, 16, somewhere in that realm, called Something Anything, a feature film that he made. I thought it was really good. And in 2019, he put out a film called Light from Light, starring the comedian Jim Gaffigan. I was really thrilled to be able to have him on the show. Curt Willis, our other guest on today's episode, is the Visit Knoxville Film Office Director. You know, he recruits feature films to come to Knoxville, and he helps accommodate them. So whether that means helping them find locations, crew, talent, he helps with that process. You know, he also helps them with the business side, whether that's tax incentives, you know, things like if a film from out of state is coming to Knoxville to shoot a feature film, you know, these people need to sleep somewhere. So he can help with hotel accommodations, studio space, and, you know, things that you don't really think about when you're making a feature-length film, things that go into it like insurance. It's so cool today we have two legitimate film industry professionals on the show. Now, these two gentlemen are also two of the co-founders of Film Fest Knox, which is the big Knoxville Film Festival that started last year after the great Keith McDaniel closed the doors on the Knoxville Film Festival a year before that. And in our conversation today, we're going to be talking about the Film Fest Knox a good bit, but we're really going to hone in on the competition aspect of it, and it is called the Elev8or Pitch. Sign-ups for the Elev8or Pitch stop on July 25th. If you have any questions about what this thing is, what are the judges looking for when it comes to the film, when it comes to the pitch, there's a lot of questions that people have about this film competition. And in this podcast, you're going to learn everything you need to know. So I hope that you get some great value out of this. Enough of my babbling. Let's just get down to the business guys and gals and everyone else. This is Paul Harrill and Curt Willis on this episode of Talking Indies in My Undies.
My name is Curt Willis. I'm the Visit Knoxville Film Office Director and one of the co-founders of Film Fest Knox.
I'm Paul Harrill, and I am a filmmaker. I'm also the co-chair of the Cinema Studies program at UT, and I'm one of the co-founders of Film Fest Knox.
Last year's Film Fest Knox was a resounding success. I mean, basically everyone agrees on that. So this year, it's coming up again, year 2. How do you all feel about that? Do you feel intimidated a little bit to keep it up to the high level that it was last year? Or are you excited about, you know, changes that may be coming in the future? What's your general sentiment about the film festival that's coming up this fall?
Thank you, first of all, for the kind words about year 1. We feel like we got a good jumping off point now. We were very happy, I think, with the way that it went, pretty smoothly. Well attended, had some great films, and I think we're excited about the concept that we have, and I think it's resonating with the independent film community, not just here, but across the country. So that's good. I think we're off to a good start, but yeah, there's probably a little anxiety to keep the bar high, to have a year as good or better than last year. We have a couple of additions to this year's festival that we're planning that might be able to give it a little bit more exposure. But we're excited.
Again, like Curt said, thanks for those kind words. I mean, we were really pleasantly surprised with how well everything came off. You've heard that the first pancake metaphor, the first pancake. A producer told me this years ago, like, well, your first pancake, it's kind of like your first film. They're like, you always get a pass. The first pancake you make is always like the test. You got to get the griddle hot or whatever. And our first pancake came out pretty well. So only on that level do I feel like, oh yeah, the rest of them need to stack up, so to speak. In addition to everything else Curt mentioned in terms of the audiences and the films and everything, I was really excited about how well the Elev8or stuff came off. I mean, it was our first time trying something like this, and the number of people that came out to do it, the level of the work that was submitted, it wasn't like shocking to me. I knew it would be good, but the level of the work overall was great. And then the level of those 8 films, and there were some others that didn't get in too, but the level of those 8 films was just like really something. I didn't see them until that night. I was not part of the selection committee that chose the 8. I was just on the jury that selected the top 3, and I was just blown away, and I had the opportunity to watch them early, but I was like, no, I want to see them on the big screen. Pardon me, I want to see them on the big screen, and I want to see them come up and pitch right after. So that was just kind of awesome. The energy in that room on that Thursday night was just off the charts, standing room only, exceeding lawful occupancy kind of. That's the sweet spot as far as I'm concerned, as long as it's not like truly out of the safe zone. Like it just felt like an awesome night. And I even had a number of students come out to see that. They were so excited about the films. They were so excited about the pitches. They were excited about the energy in that room and seeing what is in Knoxville in terms of the people that are here doing this stuff. They kind of had no clue. People, students are often so siloed, sometimes they don't even explore beyond the boundaries of the campus. And then for them to be like, wow, this is all happening here. It was super, super awesome.
Yeah, energy was great. It was a different animal than what's been done in the past. And that's, I'm not saying it's good, better or worse, but it was a shift in thinking into more feature-length storytelling. And we know, we started this because we felt like there were some folks that were ready for that there were some talented folks that the thing that might be holding them back is they just needed some guidance on next steps in getting a feature made. The idea is for it to pay dividends and we get a little feature film factory going here in Knoxville, right? And get some films churned out. It may not happen next year. It may not happen in year 3. It may not happen in 3 or 4 years, but I think at some point people are going to point back to hopefully this competition and maybe identify that as a starting point for their first feature.
The idea that we had was, let's encourage feature filmmaking in Knoxville. Let's encourage people to who already have ambitions to explore those. And for people who maybe didn't feel like they could give themselves permission, to have those ambitions, come up with a concept that could be an 8-minute short film or 8 minutes or less short film, and an idea that could be expanded into a feature. And that 8 minutes could be an 8-minute excerpt from that feature. It could be that feature film distilled into 8 minutes. It could be the backstory to that feature. But to come up with something that would be a great little short film as a proof of concept, then you come up with a 1-minute pitch that you would say, here's what my idea is, here's how it's a feature. We want you to see it, and we want you to imagine the bigger idea.
Paul, as one of the folks that shows the top 3, do you want to touch on kind of what we're looking for concepts as well? Because there might have been a little confusion about that last year. So moving forward.
Yeah. So I'll say a couple of things about that. So in terms of what we're looking for, the most important thing is it an interesting story? Is the short well executed? And this is within the context or the framework of, we know you have limited resources. We know you're making this in 2 months. You're probably making it for nothing. It's a sample, right? It's a proof of concept. We're looking for a filmmaking sensibility. Are you good at directing actors? Do you understand, editing in terms of performance? Do you understand editing in terms of, shaping a story's rhythm? making a story coherent. That kind of stuff is what we're looking for. Also on this, is this a film that could be shot in East Tennessee? There were a number of people that were involved in coming up with this. Curt was really the primary genius behind it. There were a number of people that were involved in brainstorming this idea. One of the things undoubtedly is this idea of like, we're trying to promote filmmaking here in the region.
Right.
And so is this a story that could be made in East Tennessee? Now, it doesn't mean it has to be set in East Tennessee, but can it be made here? I mean, it could be set on Mars, but you got to make us believe in that short film that you could pull that off here, right?
Yeah.
So that's up high on the list. And then below that, further down, there's a question of like, well, does it have to be a micro budget movie? And it doesn't. But the question is this a movie that could get made? Okay, so if you're making a period piece, if you're making a sci-fi epic or whatever, does the proof of concept film demonstrate, yeah, they're going to be able to pull this off by either, this is such an amazing story, you're going to be able to attract name talent and get this movie made at the whatever $1 million level that it needs to be made at, or, you know what, people may not take a gamble on this. This might be, the sort of typical first feature route, which is we're going to make this movie for $300,000 or less, maybe $50,000, whatever it is the film makeable on that level? So it doesn't have to be a micro budget movie, but we have to see it as a viable project. And that's very much a judgment call, and that's a very subjective judgment, as is everything else. Do you like the editing? Do you like the story, or whatever? But those were the things that the three judges we were weighing when we were selecting. And there were a lot of films in the conversation last year. Of those 8, the 3 we decided on, we felt like they had the best combination, the best cluster of all those things I just talked about. Do you think that captures it?
Yeah, I think that gives folks more guidance maybe than what they had last year. So, and last year was our first year. We're kind of feeling our way through it too, but we're going to be more focused this year. And I think all of those were great points that folks should keep in mind when they're producing their films.
Let's get back to this idea of the film lab. Kelly talked to me about it a little bit a few weeks ago, but I would love to hear it, what you all had envisioned for this. How did it go year one?
First of all, I want to say how fortunate we are to have a guy like Paul. So when we were talking about the prizes for this competition, at first it was cash prizes, and it was you can get your work in front of some cool judges. But then Paul added in and really sweetened the spot. Well, what about if we offer them a development lab? And that really put a really nice button on what folks can win. Paul is an accomplished filmmaker, super talented filmmaker. He's the co-chair of
you can edit this stuff now,
cinema studies at UT. To have access to a guy like Paul, I mean, he teaches this development lab at Gotham. Yeah, I mean, so I just think it's a really valuable experience that Kelly shared some of that in your previous podcast, and the other 2 teams. I think it's a really valuable experience that is went through. So I'll let Paul kind of go into the details of what the folks experienced, but I just wanted to say that first.
Okay, thanks for embarrassing me. Hopefully we'll cut that out. Just as a clarification before I forget, you mentioned I teach it at the Goth. I've taught a workshop, the micro-budget producing workshop. It's a 2-day workshop. I haven't run a lab for the Gotham, just so there's no misunderstandings out there. Someone from the Gotham is like, he's falsely representing himself. But yeah, I mean, but I've seen these labs done. In fact, there was a film that screened in the features, which, by the way, I don't have anything to do with the programming. I don't select any of the Elev8or films. I don't have any hand in the selection of the movies that play at the festival. And the reason for that is, first, I know too many people that make movies, and I don't want to be involved in people lobbying to me personally. And I also don't want to be involved in rejecting friends. Yeah, it's a really, and I've had my films accepted and certainly rejected at lots of festivals, and I understand how hard that is. And I just would prefer to stay clean and clear of that. And that's one of the reasons in particular I've been excited about being involved in the Elev8or stuff after the fact. But anyway, digression. There was a film in the festival last year called Mountains. And in 2019, Ulight Arts, which is an arts organization in Miami, had asked me to come down and teach a micro-budget producing workshop, just a 1-day. They were in the midst of a development lab for 2 features that had been selected that they were going to try to help them get their films off the ground. So I did some individual consulting then with a couple of those projects. And one of them was this project that eventually became Mountains, which showed at the festival last year.
That's cool.
And it was super cool. Yeah. And I didn't even know about this until Darren said, yeah, we've got this great movie called Mountains. He was describing it. And, and I was like, that sounds so familiar to me. I feel, and I looked through my emails. I was like, no, I met with these people. This is awesome. This is exactly what we're trying to do here, Yeah. So it was a great, even before we began, it was like a great reminder of like the kinds of things that can come out of these kinds of labs. So now, having said all of that, what the lab aims to do, we're not going to find the money for your movie. Mm-hmm. What we're trying to do is give you the next step so that that short film isn't just, hey, we made this short and it wouldn't be cool to make that into a feature. Mm-hmm. But like, okay, here are the resources. Here's how you approach something like that. And then try to help you get out into the world with it. Okay. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of different steps along the way for that. The first is if they don't have a screenplay, if they don't have a feature-length screenplay, we got to get that done because it's really hard to get any kind of movement without that. Movement in terms of casting, movement in terms of raising money, all that stuff. So the first weeks were definitely spent on screenwriting and workshopping treatments, trying to get the treatment in shape first before the script. My experience as a writer, I've been writing scripts for a long time now, and treatments are far more valuable than I thought they were when I first started. And I'm just talking about like a prose summary of the script, a 5-page, a 20-page summary. It's a lot faster to write. You're not having to write out all the dialogue. You're just telling the story. You and I are sitting here telling me the story. You're telling the story on paper. Doesn't have to be a work of literature. Just tell me the story. Mm-hmm. Then we can workshop it. We can say, "What have you considered? What would happen if you started the story sooner, or your third act isn't there?" As opposed to someone writing for weeks on a screenplay and then giving them that feedback.
I see.
So we really tried to spend some time on developing that, teaching people how to approach writing a treatment. Then we workshopped. And then they had some sessions with one of Curt's friends and colleagues, a great writer named Gary Williams. And he gave them feedback on, did he give them feedback on the treatments and the scripts or just the scripts?
So on one of the scripts, there's only one right now that's finished. The other two teams are still finishing up theirs, but they also the treatments as well.
But he started with the treatments. Yeah. That's right. He read with the treatments. Like once they were off and running, it was like, okay, I think you all are ready to be writing now or writing the screenplay. We went into what I would call the sort of micro budget producing part of the lab, which was, and that's the stuff that's based on the workshop that I've taught at the Gotham, and I taught it for Nashville Film Festival, for the one I taught in Miami, all this stuff. And this was the longest one I've taught because it was probably like 3 or 4 sessions. It starts at development and it ends at distribution, and we just talk through every stage of the process. The section we talk about the least is probably production, because it's probably the thing that the people in the room know the most about. Yeah. In terms of like, okay, you know how to make a short film. You're just showing up and doing that every day for a longer period of time. I don't need to tell a filmmaker like Kelly Burke how to be resourceful. What he needed to hear about maybe more was like, okay, if you wanted to cast it larger, and he was talking about John Goodman and all that stuff on the last podcast, but if you wanted to cast it larger, what's the process for that? What does it mean to work with SAG? What are the budget levels for that? Do you want to consider that or do you not? Some people like Kelly might be like, as the phrase he used was, I want to be a singer-songwriter, just me and my guitar. If you want to stay at that level, more power to you. Like, I love that, but if you want to make a bigger movie, if you want to make a movie, I don't mean bigger is better. I mean, like a larger scale movie, you want to make a movie that has name cast. What's the process for that? Because some of these films, we didn't want to assume all these movies are $50,000 movies. We wanted to say, if you want to think of this as a $5 million, start with trying to aim for it to be a $5 million movie with your dream cast of movie stars. What is that process, at least? How do you have a producer reach out to an agent? And even backing up from that, some people like Kelly are producing their work themselves. What's it mean to have a producer involved? What do you expect from them? What are the things they should be expecting from you? What are all the benefits to it? What are the downsides, if any? all of that stuff. But we talk through development, we talk through pre-production, production a little bit, post-production, especially stuff like working with a composer and music rights and things like that, legal stuff. And then we talk about distribution, especially stuff on the festival circuit. And we talked about that not just for a feature, but we talked about it for the shorts. Like, okay, you've made this short that you want to get out. One of the things that surprising to me sometimes about, the films that come out of these time film competitions and that we want to encourage a different direction with is that people make these films for the time film competition. And it's like they made it for that and that alone. And you're like, hey, that's a good movie. More people should see that. People should see that outside of Knoxville. And you may have some career aspirations. This is a great way to achieve them. What are some ways to get that short out? So we talk about distribution that way too. Everyone coming in, we tell them actually the weekend of the festival after they win, we're like, don't put this up on YouTube yet. Hang on to it. You may want to be putting this out at other festivals. So we talk through that stuff. I don't know, Curt, what am I leaving out?
Nothing. That's great. But Paul mentioned that we're not going to line up the money for your film, but we could introduce you to the person that does. That's kind of the point, is to get you hooked up with folks like that to maybe champion your project or at least give you feedback on the viability of it in the market. And everything's a long shot, of course. There's no guarantees in this business. It takes a lot of dedication and hard work, and sometimes it takes a really long time to get a film made, and it puts people in a different position and gives them some guidance. Yeah,
one thing I do want to, I don't want to say correct, but just sort of add to from Kelly's podcast conversation is that you asked him like, oh, is the workshop done? Is it over? And he was like, yeah, we're pretty much done. And so my part of it is done in terms of like, okay, we've gone through all those sessions. The real linchpin of all this is they got to finish the script, right? Yeah. And so when that screenplay is, I don't want to say done. Screenplay is done when you wrap the last day, But like when the screenplay is like at that point where like, okay, you can start submitting it out to producers or for cast or whatever. There's another stage to the lab, and that is that we have producers that we will invite to read the scripts and then have one-on-one consultations with the writer-directors or writers or the teams, let's just say the teams, to discuss the project. Those producers might say, well, I understand you got some notes on the last draft and you didn't take them, and I'm going to give you the same notes that you heard from everybody else, which is your third act isn't there yet, you know. Or they may say, this has some real potential and I'd like to keep talking about it, and they might become involved with it. When we had one producer who was at the festival last year who saw one of the shorts and said, let me know when they've got a script. I'd like to meet with them.
Nice. Wow.
So like that's a real thing. Yeah. Okay. That's a real thing. And it's not a guarantee. And all the other things that Curt said are true. The fact is like that can happen. Okay. No one has finished the script to that place yet, but that's the place where we want them to get.
Also, I just want to throw this in there. I'd said earlier that this is for folks that are ready to start their feature film careers, but it's also for other folks. I think there's a lot of value in folks that maybe they don't think they're ready, but they should still do it. It's still a great exercise for them to come in and, sharpen the blades and make a film, even if it's not going to finish in the top 8 or the top 3. They can still see what other folks are doing that are finishing in the top 8 or top 3, or they're maybe a little further along than them. They can network with those folks, but it's also wonderful practice. And, making films is always a good thing.
Very few people get the opportunity to watch a film that they made in a proper real theater. Exactly. Oh, that is just so freaking cool. So lots of film festivals, so I hear, sometimes it's in, a basement, or at a church, or whatever, which is totally cool. And there's something really neat about that type of environment. But there's also something really, really neat about going to a national chain movie theater and seeing your film up there. So I completely agree with you on that also, Curt. I was going to follow up for this development lab. What's the frequency of it? What's the schedule, the calendar? Is it something you do once a week? Is it once a month?
Great question. It's for them, right? So, and we were doing it for the first time too. And one of the caveats from the beginning was, I think the first email I sent out to everybody was, we haven't done this before. Please be forgiving. We know what we're talking about, but we don't know what we're doing with this, So we reached out to everyone. And I think we had sort of like a first conversation before the end of the year. And then we started in earnest in January. The first thing we did was we had a little meet and greet, talked about it, what we were going to try to do. And then I gave them info for a treatment, like wrote it all out. Here's what you're trying to do. Let's take your winter break, your holiday break, and start working on that treatment. Because the further along you get with that, the quicker we'll be able to dig in. We basically just polled everybody about their availability, and miraculously everyone was available on Monday nights. And so it was like every 2 weeks, So it was like every 2 weeks, and occasionally something would come up and we'd need to postpone a week or something, or if we were like trying to do their first draft of this and we're like, okay, your script is due in 2 weeks, and then you'll read it all, and then we'll meet back in a month and we'll have the workshop while everyone's giving feedback. It wasn't an onerous ask. And I should also say, it wasn't just the writer and director who were invited into the process. Within limits, I'd say like 5 people or something. We'd welcome 5 people from a team. There were times where maybe the writer or director couldn't be there, but like the other team members were there. And there are also people who are interested in writing and directing, and we'd like to think that they're benefiting from this too, for their own projects. So we just want people to be feeling supported and, mentored. Let me go back to this other thing, which was at the night of the fest, that Thursday night, as a member of the jury, a few filmmakers were like, and here's my lookbook, or here's our budget. And a couple were like, here's our treatment. None of that's required. That's supplemental. And as something I said when we announced the winners at the awards ceremony was no one was selected because of that. There were some projects that were kind of on the fence for us, and in some cases it helped, and in some cases it actually didn't help. It made us feel like, this isn't as far along, or this is not as doable as we sort of thought, And so if anyone's doing that stuff, we would say a lookbook is actually not the most interesting thing to me, but treatment would be. If someone had a 3-page treatment of like what the full feature is, I think that helps us along so much. And we actually talk about lookbooks and budgets and things like that in the lab. To me, it's like, I don't want to look at a budget until I've read the script. Anything like that seems real premature anyway.
I recognize that, not all the teams brought this additional supplemental material, but every team did do something this year, and that was create a pitch. Everyone submits a video pitch. I haven't heard any feedback on that. How important is the video pitch aspect? Is that an important part in the first steps of submitting a film? Is the pitch really just mostly important for that live pitch? Anyways, let's talk about pitches. No one's talking about pitches.
That's great. Yeah, because it is the Elev8or Pitch and Short Film Competition. Yeah. That is the name of it.
I think it's a very important aspect. It lets us know that you're thinking about a feature-length story, So it was definitely taken into consideration, but it's part of a big package. All of the aspects were taken into consideration. Percentage-wise, I don't really know. I can't give you a number there, but it was definitely taken seriously.
And the live pitch, being a judge, seeing the contestants going through that process live with a lot of eyeballs on, a lot of pressure on them to do well. What are you looking for as a judge in that moment?
Just tell the story. Tell the story and introduce yourself to us. I had probably met, of the 8, I'd probably met maybe 3 of those people that stood up there. Of the 3 teams, I'd probably met members of 3 of those teams before in my life. And the other people on the pitch jury, Keith maybe knew a couple. Kristen probably didn't know anybody. Mm-hmm. So it's really an introduction. It's an audition on one level for the mentoring workshop. The pitch is short. It's a minute. Tell the story. That's it, right? There's no room for any fat, Then it's the Q&A. And the Q&A is like, if they didn't tell us, where did this come from? Why do you want to make this? As Curt said, like, making a movie is a long journey. Making a feature is a long journey. Both the features I've made have taken me 5 years to get off the ground, and from inception to, getting them out there. And I got to believe that you really want to make this. Like, you really want to make this. How serious are you? This is a good place for me to compliment Kelly, which is his pitch. He conveyed how much that would mean to him. We were like, this guy is ready. And it was not in a desperate way. Like, he was just like, I've been doing this for a long time, and I think it's finally time for me the next step. And I was just like, yeah, I think it is. I don't know how to summarize that into just a word or two, but it's because it's not confidence. It's not confidence either. You can't be unable to speak and so nervous that you can't get the words out with all those eyeballs on you. You've got to convince us that you're ready.
Going back, it's a very hard thing to do, to make a feature film. I think Paul and I have had this conversation before. Like, it better be a business that you really not just want to be in, but have to be in, need to be in.
Very true.
You have to feel the amount of pain that's just, you'll do anything to make that pain go away. And I think that's what I got from Kelly. You know, he feels a lot of pain for not, he wants this so bad, you know, he wants to be a filmmaker so bad, a feature filmmaker. And I felt like that pain, but that passion really showed when he was doing his Q&A and pitch. So you tell me though, because.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. His pitch was good. His Q&A was great. We can talk about Chad, you know, Chad Cunningham, who did the Catacombs, which won first place. Like, his pitch was like, he just came out and walked up there and owned that stage. Yeah,
Chad's a cool character.
And he was polished and confident. That film was confidently made, and that pitch was super confident. Again, he was ready. And he had great answers. And the way he talked about why he wanted to make that film, coming from a very different place than Kelly, but you believed the passion behind that.
Chad's a guy that can get it done. He's a pro. So,
but I want to go back to something Curt said too, which is like, you know what? If you're not ready, this is also the contest for you, because guess how you get ready?
Yeah.
By doing it, you know, and doing it and, you know, stumbling a little bit. This is like the safest place to be doing that. And that's what we want it to be. We want it to be this really safe and encouraging place. This is a really supportive film community. Even I had this kind of hesitation of like, oh, I don't know if I would want any of my students entering into this, you know, because they're not ready yet or whatever. And then I was like, you know what? It'd be fantastic for them to do this, for them to get networked, for them to see each other's work. They get their work graded in class. It's a completely different thing to have your work just out there in the world and evaluated. And, you know, if I wasn't involved on this side, I'd be hopping over to the other side just because it's like, it's a good workout. You know, you got to stay in shape.
If you don't finish in the top 3 or even the top 8, your film's still eligible for all the prizes. And that happened last year. A lot of the films that weren't in the top 3 won best, whatever, actors or directing or anything else. So, yeah.
I know that the kickoff is the 25th of July.
Yeah, got a lot of teams signed up. We got a lot of new teams signed up. So I'm very excited for this year to see some new faces and some faces from last year. I think we were up to like 15 right now. The kickoff party at Scruffy City will be on the 25th this month, July 25th. Here's another important thing, a little different than the past, is you can do all the pre-production you want. This can be an idea that you've had or developed for years. You could have the script already. You could have locations lined up. You can have your crew. You can have everything. You just can't film anything until after that kickoff, which is on July 25th. And then the turn-in date is October 12th. I don't have it in front of me. It's mid-October. So you got
mid-October, yeah.
Yeah, you got a couple 2.5 months.
Enter and come to the kickoff, and we'll tell you when the cutoff date is.
That's right. So 19 days. So
Curt,
sign up.
Can they come to the kickoff event and then
Absolutely.
Sign up there?
You can find your teams there, and you can sign up there. You can sign up all the way to midnight, July 25th. And you can also, right now, you can go to filmfestknox.com, sign up there. It's $75 fee. You get whoever signs up pays that fee, gets a full festival pass. You can go to any screenings that you want during the festival, during the 4 days. And then you also get a t-shirt.
Yes.
What a bargain. Also, if you're listening to this, come out for the event. It's free. Who cares if you don't have a team? Come out and meet other filmmakers. If nothing else, come out and meet other filmmakers. If you are listening to this podcast, you should be hanging out with these people, right?
Oh, yeah.
So come out for that.
You get some free, amazing Preservation Pub pizza, too.
There you go. Is it at Pres Pub or is it
Scruffy?
Scruffy?
It's at Scruffy, but
okay.
They make the pizza at the other.
So Scruffy City Hall.
I think that's right.
Yeah, that's right. Scruffy City Hall on the 25th. Yep. And come out and mix and mingle, and who knows?
Sounds good. Paul, Curt, this is cool.
Thank you, Jacob.
Thanks for having us.
My pleasure. See you on the 25th.
Yes.
You got it.
Yes. Paul Harrill, Curt Willis. That was so much fun. What a good episode. Informative. Now I feel like I have a decent vision on what this thing is. You know, last year it was a little murky in my mind. I feel like the waters have cleared up a great deal. So if you'd like to sign up to be part of this year's Elev8or Pitch Film Competition, just go to filmfestknox.com. Look around on that website. You'll be able to find it. Sign up. Sign-ups are $75. You get a free t-shirt and 1 full festival pass. Just getting a festival pass out of it is a pretty cool thing. Not to mention the most important part, an opportunity to express yourself in the medium of film. How lucky are we that we live in an era where essentially anybody has access to the tools required to make a short film. It's just so cool. Get your friends together, get a team together, go out and have some fun. Yes, the goal is to try to make a short film that can be turned into a feature-length film. That is the ultimate goal. But even if you just want to go out and have some fun with your friends, shoot a cool film. Who knows, it may be great, maybe terrible, it doesn't matter. The act of doing something is better than the act of doing nothing when a great opportunity like this arises. So anyways, enough from me. I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to speaking to you again soon.